Entitled mom tries to force me to sell my property to pay for her daughter's college education, and does this when I refuse. I'm a 34-year-old property owner with a string of houses in my name in my hometown. This has been the result of years of hard work, careful investments, and sacrifices made along the way. Just to provide some context, I come from a modest family. My parents were both blue-collar workers who labored tirelessly to provide a comfortable life for me and my siblings. They always dreamed of owning their own house one day, but it was beyond their reach. It was their upbringing that ignited my ambition and fueled my determination to build a better life for myself and my family. One day, I met my wife during our college years. She came from a similar background, raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. She learned the importance of financial prudence and resourcefulness. We both dreamed of overcoming our financial struggles and creating a stable life for our children in the future. My wife and I worked tirelessly, buying and flipping houses over the years. We saved every penny and made careful investments, which eventually allowed us to own several properties. Each property represents years of hard work, countless sacrifices, and a shared dream between us. Today, I am the proud father of two wonderful kids, a son and a daughter. Our properties are not just a source of income, but a symbol of our dedication to securing a future for our children. Little did I know, my life would soon take an unexpected turn, thanks to an entitled woman named Emily, a 40-year-old single mother who had been one of my tenants for a few years. She resided in a comfortable 3-bedroom house that I had purchased years ago, before I married my wife. The property is in a prime location near her daughter's high school. Emily had been left by her husband shortly after their daughter was born, which left her to raise her daughter on her own. When I became aware of her circumstances, I offered her subsidized rent to help her move in. Although I knew I would lose money, I wanted her and her daughter to have a decent place to live. Over the years, I never raised the rent, and it remained the same. Emily had been a reliable tenant, always paying on time. We developed a casual landlord-tenant relationship, and sometimes she would reach out for help with repairs around the house. Her daughter, Lily, was now a high school senior preparing to apply for college. 3 months ago, Emily informed me that Lily had been accepted into a prestigious out-of-state university, which was an incredible achievement. However, this university was very expensive, and unfortunately, Lily's scholarship barely covered 10% of her fees. I knew the financial struggles of higher education, and I had my reservations about how they would manage the cost. One day, Emily asked to meet me. I thought it had something to do with repairs around the house, so I agreed without much hesitation. We sat down in the living room, and Emily began by thanking me for my generosity in offering subsidized rent. She then explained that she desperately wanted Lily to attend her dream university, but after calculating tuition, housing, and other expenses, she realized that it was too much for her to handle alone. She had reached out to financial aid, looked into scholarships, and even taken on a part-time job after her full-time one, but it still wasn't enough. I nodded solemnly, understanding her situation, and thought that perhaps she was going to ask if she could delay the rent payment for the month, which would have been understandable. But instead, Emily made a staggering request that left me dumbfounded. She asked if I could sell the property she was living in. I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious?" I asked. "You want me to sell my property to pay for your daughter's college tuition?" Emily's eyes pleaded with me. She explained that selling the property would give her enough money to cover the full cost of Lily's college fees. She even mentioned that the property had already been appraised and would fetch a good price. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her if she had lost her mind. There was no way I was going to sell my property to pay for her daughter's education. I told her that this house meant something to me, and I wasn't going to sell it just like that. Emily insisted again, telling me that I could loan her the money and that Lily would pay me back once she graduated. Though I understood the importance of a college education, I was not going to accept her outrageous request. I calmly explained to Emily that the property was a significant part of my livelihood, and I couldn't simply part with it. The burden of her daughter's tuition shouldn't fall on me. I suggested that if she couldn't afford to send Lily to the university, she could ask her family members for help or look into more affordable options. Despite my attempts to reason with her, Emily continued to press the issue, insisting that I was the only one who could help, and that selling my property wasn't a big deal. It was at that moment I realized this conversation was going nowhere. I left the property, asking Emily not to approach me about this again. I also requested that she understand how outrageous her request was and find another way to finance her daughter's education. But over the next few weeks, Emily didn't give up. As Lily's college application deadline drew closer, the situation grew more unbearable. Emily, despite my refusal, continued to plead with me every day to sell the property. She even stopped paying rent in protest. Our once amicable relationship had soured. The tension between us grew as Emily remained steadfast in her belief that my property was the key to her financial solution. She was convinced that my refusal was selfish and that it was putting her daughter's future in jeopardy. Meanwhile, I was losing money because of her refusal to pay rent. I warned her that I would take legal action, as we had an ironclad rental agreement. But Emily refused to comply, and it became increasingly clear that her demands were never-ending. The situation took a further turn when Emily started involving others in our dispute. She began talking to her friends and the neighbors, painting me as an unsympathetic landlord who refused to help a struggling single mother. She told them that I was wealthy, but refused to help her pay for her daughter's college fees. Her story garnered sympathy from those she confided in. To amplify her cause, Emily took to social media, posting on Facebook and blaming me for her daughter's inability to attend college. Rumors began circulating in the neighborhood. People sympathized with Emily, assuming I was in a position to help but was knowingly refusing. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own community. Finally, my wife decided to reach out to Emily in an attempt to resolve the growing conflict. The tension in the neighborhood was mounting, and she thought direct communication might help. However, Emily was not open to a calm discussion. She immediately launched into a tirade, accusing me of having the means to sell the property and fund her daughter's college education, but refusing to do so. Despite my wife's earnest attempts to reason with Emily, her conviction remained unshaken. She insisted that we had the means to fund Lily's education and that we were being selfish. The conversation devolved into a repetitive loop, with Emily pushing my wife to convince me to agree to her demands. Her eyes welling up as she described the sacrifices she had made for her daughter. She painted herself as a mother willing to do anything to secure her daughter's future. She claimed that the sale of the property was the only option left for her, and that I, as the landlord, had the means to help her, but was selfishly refusing to. In contrast, my lawyer and I stood firm in our position. We presented evidence of the subsidized rent I had offered her over the years and emphasized that I had gone above and beyond to provide her with affordable housing. We also highlighted the fact that I had worked tirelessly for many years to build my property portfolio and was not willing to part with it simply to fund her daughter's education. The courtroom was tense as both sides made their arguments. Emily's attorney tried to cast doubt on my character, accusing me of being a wealthy, unsympathetic landlord who refused to help a struggling single mother. But my lawyer expertly countered these claims, pointing out that I had never raised her rent and had been supportive in many other ways. As the trial progressed, it became clear that Emily's accusations lacked solid evidence. She couldn't provide any concrete proof that I had intentionally exploited her situation or that I had the means to sell my property without facing significant financial consequences. The judge seemed to recognize this, and it appeared as though the case was turning in our favor. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor, dismissing Emily's demands and ordering her to pay the outstanding rent that had accumulated during her protest. She was also held accountable for the defamatory statements she had made online and to the neighbors. Emily was ordered to cease and desist from spreading further lies and was instructed to pay damages for the harm caused to my reputation. While I was relieved by the outcome, it was bittersweet. The legal battle had taken a significant emotional toll on my family. My wife and I were grateful that the court had ruled in our favor, but the damage to our reputation in the community was not easily undone. The false accusations and the pressure from Emily had left a lasting scar on our lives. After the ruling, Emily attempted to contact me one last time. She apologized for her actions, acknowledging that she had gone too far. She explained that she had acted out of desperation and that her intentions were never to harm me. But by then, the damage had been done, and I was no longer willing to entertain any further discussions with her. As for me, I had learned some valuable lessons throughout this ordeal. First and foremost, I had learned the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity. I had worked hard to build my life and my property portfolio, and I wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how desperate they were, take that away from me. I had also learned that sometimes, even when you think you are doing the right thing, others might not see it the same way. I had been generous with Emily, but her sense of entitlement had blinded her to the reality of the situation. It was a harsh reminder that you can't please everyone, no matter how much you try to. In the end, I moved forward with my family, focusing on rebuilding our reputation in the community and continuing to work toward securing a bright future for my children. As for Emily, I hoped that one day, she would realize that the path she had taken was not the solution to her problems, and that there were other ways to achieve her goals without resorting to manipulation and deceit. As time passed, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy for my family. The legal battle with Emily, though concluded, still lingered in the back of our minds. The tension from the case, the public scrutiny, and the emotional toll it had taken on us, particularly my wife, who had always been the emotional backbone of our household, had created a distance in our relationship with some friends and neighbors. Trust, once easily given, had been shattered, but we were determined to rebuild. We began by focusing on our immediate family. My wife and I had always maintained a strong relationship, but the stress of the case had tested our bond. We started to communicate more openly about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. We took small trips together, allowing ourselves to reconnect without the shadow of the lawsuit hanging over us. Our children, too, seemed to have bounced back. They had been shielded from the worst of the drama, but they had noticed the tension. It was important to us that they understood the importance of resilience in the face of adversity. During this time, my business continued to grow. I had been fortunate to secure a few new investments, and despite the initial setbacks, the market had shifted in my favor. The portfolio I had worked so hard to build was flourishing. I began to focus more on giving back to the community, sponsoring local events, and supporting small businesses. I realized that I could use my success not just to further my own goals, but to help those around me, and in doing so, perhaps mend some of the bridges that had been burned out. However, Emily's situation did not improve. Despite her apology, I kept a safe distance from her. I had received occasional updates through mutual acquaintances about her life, and it was clear she was still struggling. She had, in fact, sold the house that had started the whole conflict, but without the financial windfall she had hoped for. She had faced some harsh realities in the aftermath of the case, and there were whispers that she had learned some hard lessons about entitlement and expectations. Several months later, Emily made an unexpected move. She reached out to me one more time. This time, her message wasn't an apology, but rather a request for help. She had hit a rough patch, financially and personally, and needed a loan to cover some debts. She was now seeking a fresh start, away from the mistakes of her past. Her tone was different, more humble, and filled with regret. It was clear she was asking for a chance at redemption. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt sympathy for her. I had seen her at her most vulnerable during the court proceedings, and I knew that she was not a bad person. She had simply made terrible decisions in moments of desperation. But another part of me couldn't forget the hurt and betrayal I had felt during the entire ordeal. Could I really risk helping someone who had once tried to tear my life apart? I consulted with my wife, and after much deliberation, we decided that we would not lend her the money. It wasn't out of malice, but out of a belief that sometimes people need to face the consequences of their actions. Giving her another financial lifeline would only prolong her reliance on others instead of helping her build the independence she needed. Instead, we offered a suggestion. Emily could enroll in a local financial literacy course that might help her manage her money more effectively in the future. We even offered to cover the cost of the course for her, but only if she agreed to take the first step toward rebuilding her own life. It was a small gesture, but it was the best way we knew how to help without enabling the cycle of dependence and poor decisions. Emily thanked us, but she never took us up on the offer. After a few months of silence, I heard through the grapevine that she had moved away, leaving behind the city that had once been her battleground. I didn't know where she had gone or what she was doing, but I hoped that, wherever she was finding a way to heal and rebuild her life. As for me, I had learned that sometimes the hardest part of moving on isn't letting go of the conflict, but letting go of the anger. The battle with Emily had been draining, and although I had won in the legal sense, I felt as though I had lost something far more valuable in the process: peace of mind. But life went on, and as I focused on the future, I knew I had to leave the past behind me. My family was my priority, and I was determined to protect them from any further harm. The legacy of this chapter in my life wasn't the victory in the courtroom or the financial success that followed. It was the lesson I had learned about resilience, about the need to protect what truly matters, and about the importance of forgiveness, even when the person asking for it doesn't fully deserve it. In the end, I realized that true strength lies not in winning battles, but in learning when to walk away. And for me, that meant stepping away from the bitterness, letting go of the need for retribution, and focusing on the life I had built with the people who mattered most.